Monday. I have just received the mail with lots of nice letters. It was so jolly hearing from you all. I am glad to tell you that this section is to be mentioned by order of the army, and it will probably receive the Croix de Guerre, which our section commander will wear, of course. We may all get some sort of medal sometime as well, perhaps. If my letter seems too horrible, just don't send it on to the friends who might otherwise care to hear. My only object in writing so fully is that I do want you all to realize the futility, the utter damnable wickedness and butchery of this war. P.S. The governor of the Department of Lorraine sent from Nancy the following tribute. On this day, when you celebrate your national independence, at the same hour that France in violent combat defends her independence against an enemy whose madness for domination threatens the liberty of all nations, and whose barbarous methods menace civilization, I address to you the expression of the profound friendship of the French for your great and generous nation, and take this occasion to offer new assurance of the intense gratitude of the population of Lorraine for the admirable devotion of all the members of the American ambulance of Pont-à-Mousson. Pont-à-Mousson, July 16th. It so happened that a wounded officer was going to Paris, and he posted the letters of July 2nd to you for me, and therefore you got them 2 weeks earlier. Now Doc has suddenly returned on his way to Pagny, and I am writing about the last few days. They have been full of misery and yet full of pleasure. The 14th of July, the day of the fall of the Bastille, was to be a fête day for France as usual, but I little thought I should spend such a wonderful day myself. Schroeder and I were invited to pay a visit to the batteries above one of our posts de secours, and as we were both off duty, about 3 o'clock we went up to B, in one of our service cars, and thence walked to see our friends. If anyone doubts what grateful friends and how appreciative the soldiers are for our little help here, they should have seen the welcome we were given. We were shown the 75s, the 220s, the 155s, and you must realize by that how completely we foreigners are trusted. For could the Germans but know where these guns are, few of our friends would live to see France win the war. Next we were shown all over the abris, little dugouts about 10 to 14 feet underground, and covered with 3 or 4 layers of good-sized trunks like this. Footnote. These temporary defences have stood out against shells for weeks, while permanent works were levelled in a few days at Liège, Maubeuge, and Antwerp. High-explosive shells by the thousands are the only answer to field works. End footnote. These they retire to when the Boches bombard the wood. All along the paths leading from one big gun to another were shells, 200 or 300 great things about 3 feet 8 inches high. All along the paths leading from one big gun to another were shells, 200 or 300 great things about 3 feet 8 inches high. We then went and had some beer with our friends, all non-commissioned officers, and about 4 o'clock a corporal came to say that the 155s were going to fire 4 rounds, and would we care to go and watch, as the officer invited us. Of course, we followed our guide to the gun, and they all posed while I took a photo. Then the officer asked me if I would care to photo the gun being fired, and I said yes. I stood some 10 meters away and had just pressed the button of the camera when I jumped half out of my skin at the noise of the explosion. I shall anxiously look for the negatives, and I hope they will be good. It was now 5 o'clock, and we had to return to Pont-à-Mousson. Would we stay to dinner, the 14th July? What? Spend France's fête day with France's artillery in a wood some 2 kilos from the Germans, surrounded by the guns that were fighting for her liberty. It sounded too good. Of course we accepted. So 5 of us, 3 French artillerymen and Schroeder and I, walked down to get B on the road our ambulances travel all day long. We were all in one line across the road when, without warning, bang! 30 meters away, earth was thrown yards into the air. The noise was terrific, and then the black, dense smoke began almost lazily to fade away. We all 5 stood still, semi-crouching, although inwardly knowing that all precautions were then futile. That if we were to be killed by the eclat of that explosion, we could not escape. It was too late. After 5 or 10 seconds we breathed again, and I looked at my companions. 3 of them had been firing heavy shells for 11 months, but their sunburnt faces had assumed the most haggard, pale expression I have ever seen. I had no looking-glass, but I expect if Schroeder writes his experiences to his people, he will include my face as being like the rest. Had we been 20 yards farther on, or 30 yards farther back, fini! The eclat of a German shell always goes like this. But the French like this. Footnote. This effect may be due to the fact that the German shells have percussion fuses, whose action is less rapid than that of the French shells. This would allow them to penetrate the target or ground before detonation, and would give them the geyser effect sketched. In the French shells, with less delay action in the fuse, the explosion would take place more immediately on impact, giving a more lateral burst effect. Of course, the delay in the fuses is easily varied by the gunners. End footnote. The strain made me give a little laugh, which froze pretty quickly on my lips, for I was silenced with a look. Attends! Listen for the next départ. 10 anxious ears listened, but it was just a chance German shell, and no more arrived. When we returned to go to dinner about an hour and a half later, I asked them to help me to find the fuse, and there it was, still hot. I shall keep it in memory of July 14th, 1915. We sat down in that little wooden shelter, about 16 of us, and I cannot tell you what a happy party we were. Laughter and song fêting the 2 honored guests, the Américains. The captain heard we were dining with his non-commissioned officers, and sent up 3 bottles of white wine to drink the health of the Allies. We had brought some Moselle as a present to our hosts, and when the others were finished our bottles, were a great surprise. They were quickly emptied. A candle was stuck in each, and we started singing and telling stories. Then, as an act of courtesy, I was asked to sing our national hymn. I got up. A bottle of wine was fetched to fill our glasses, and did so as loud and as heartily as I knew how. It must have been a strange sight for the casually passing French soldiers, to see their 16 compatriots standing silently, listening to a man sing a song that they scarcely knew, though one which means so much to so many thousands of our countrymen. I had but finished when bang, 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 bang! 4 75s fired over our heads, going to kill those who should sing another national anthem. The Marseillaise followed, and I have never heard it sung in surroundings more fitting or more impressive. Then an artillery duel started, and backward and forward above us went and whistled the shells. 5 of our friends suddenly left us, and in 3 minutes we heard the big 220 firing its death gift into the German trenches. All the time the songs continued, and those woods must have echoed and re-echoed with the strains of the Marseillaise, etc. Schroeder and I, however, began to get anxious, for the noise of the artillery increased and increased, and we knew that in about 2 hours all the ambulances would be needed at X. So we bade our friends goodbye and arrived home to find that only half of our cars would be required. We then turned into bed with the conviction that we had really experienced the true feeling of France on the anniversary of the great step toward what she believed would be for the freedom of the people. Doc had arrived unexpectedly from Paris, and your letters were very welcome. Also one from Mother and Mrs. A. It was the very night, 14th July, that you were giving your lecture. I am sure it was a success. July 15th. Doc and I spent the day together. It was my duty day in Montauville, and although it poured, I enjoyed it very much. All we did and saw I shall leave to him to tell you about, so good night. God bless you all. Pont-à-Mousson, July 24, 1915. When I last wrote you, I little thought my next letter would follow such a tragedy as occurred on Thursday the 22nd. It is now 2 days ago, so in the comparative calm of perspective, I must try to tell you the whole story from beginning to end. Thursday morning, Schroeder and I went to visit the hospital on the other side of the Moselle, and there we were received by the Sister Superior, who personally showed us all over the building. The corridors are now used as wards, as every room but one in the large old convent has been hit by a shell. We got back to lunch about 12 o'clock, and Mignon, our indefatigable friend in the position of general servant, upbraided us for our unpunctuality, etc. We had hardly finished lunch when a shell burst some 20 meters away, and we hurriedly took to the cellar, while 11 more shells exploded all around our headquarters, or caserne, as we call it. We then went for a round of inspection, and found that the 12 shells had all fallen on our side of the road, and were all within 40 or 50 meters of us. This made us feel pretty sure that the shells were meant for us, or for our motors. Schroeder and I discussed the matter, and came to the conclusion that we did not like the situation very much, and that if the Germans sent perhaps 6 shells all at once, we should many of us get caught. I was very tired, and at about 1:30 went to sleep, and slept until 5:30, when I went to dinner at the caserne. The evening meal over, an argument started about the merits of a periodical called Le Mot. Do you know it? A kind of futurist paper. After a rapid-fire commentary from one and then another of us, which continued until about 8:30, Schroeder and I decided to go to our rooms to bed. We were walking home when I reminded him that he had been asked to tell 4 of our fellows who slept in a house nearby to be sure that no light could be seen through the shutters. So turning back, we rapped on the window and heard merry laughter, and were greeted with a cheery invitation to join the 9 who had gathered inside. It seems one of them, who had been on duty at Montauville, had managed to get some fresh bread and butter and jam, and they were celebrating the event. We had to decline their friendly hospitality, however, as we wanted to get some sleep. I had just got my boots off when whish, bang, 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 bang! 4 huge shells burst a little way down the road toward our caserne. 30 seconds after came 2 more. 5 minutes later, 6 more. And then we heard a screaming woman ejaculating hysterically, "C'est l'Américain!" Schroeder and I looked at each other without speaking. We hurriedly dressed and started to run to the caserne. Women and soldiers shouting to us to stay where we were, but rushing on through the fog, smoke, and dust. We reached headquarters. There we found the rest of the section in the cellar, and hurriedly going over those present, realized that 2 were absent. Mignot, and the mechanic of the French officer attached to us. Out we ran, shouting, "Mignot! Mignot!" From the dust and smoke there staggered someone we did not know, blood flowing from head, legs, and arms. "Au secours! Au secours!" It was the mechanic. Leaving him with the section to be dressed, we rushed madly through the fog-bound street, crying, "Mignot! Mignot!" Then suddenly, across the road, a shadow, a dark spot on the ground. 2 women quite dead, a boy dying, a man badly wounded, and, farther on, a still, blue form. "Quick, old man, listen! His heart!" It was he, Mignot, and dead. Our loyal and devoted servant, who was almost the living incarnation of Kipling's Gunga Din. We rushed back to get stretchers and a car. Ogilvy got his car, and we got our stretchers out to take away the blessés. There were a few of us grouped about, some 7 or 8, and a car, with the wounded just put on stretchers, when, "Look out!" Bang! 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 3 more shells. We had already thrown ourselves on the ground, and then, finding we were still alive, feverishly loaded the car. "Good God, I've stalled it," said the driver. Then the cranking. Would it never start? Try again. Thank heaven it was off. Hardly 30 seconds after. Whish! Bang! Bang! 2 more came. We retired to a cellar for a few minutes, as the 3 dead could stay there while it was so terribly dangerous. At last we emerged, and were about to lift Mignot's body, when both arms moved. Was he alive, after all? No, it was only the electric wires he was lying on that had stimulated his muscles. The car turned the corner with the 3 dead, and we ran back to the caserne. There we found the rest of our section, very shaken indeed. A shell had burst just outside of the house where the 9 were making merry, and the violence of the impact had hurled all of them to the ground. 2 feet nearer, and the whole lot would have been killed. Schroeder and I decided we had better go back to bed, and we insisted that Ogilvy, who lived in the house so nearly destroyed, should come with us. We made him a sort of a bed on the floor and turned in. As the light went out, a strange silence crept over us. Three, and I am sure that I was not the only one who was offering a silent prayer. for the wife and children of our devoted friend Mignon, and of gratitude for our miraculous escape from death. I must have dozed off when I was awakened by the whole house shaking, and 6 more terrific explosions followed, and then still 6 more. Should we go out again? No, all the rest were certainly in cellars and out of danger. About 2 o'clock, a tremendous attack woke us up, and for an hour the whole place shook and re-echoed with the sound of artillery, hand grenade, and rifle fire. We stayed awake, expecting a call, but none came till 5 o'clock, when we were told that the médecin divisionnaire had ordered us to leave Pont-à-Mousson immediately. We dressed and packed and got around to the caserne to find that nearly everyone had already left, and that all thought Ogilvy dead. Why, we asked. His house had been completely destroyed. Even a 280 shell had burst in the cellar itself. 2 shells had burst in our caserne, and all around was wreckage and mess. I got some coffee at a little café, and being on Montauville duty, went up there, a sad and depressed being. That afternoon, about 1 o'clock, a shell burst right in the middle of the street at Aix, killing 1 soldier and badly wounding 4 more. I was not far away. I took them to the hospital at Dieulouard, where I found the rest of the section getting themselves installed in their new quarters. In the evening we went, at 8 o'clock, to poor Mignon's funeral. Sad and horribly gruesome it was. Imagine a little chapel with 4 coffins in front of a small altar, one of them with many flowers, and of oak, Mignon's, the other 3 just pine wood. The ordinary war coffin. The governor came, and I shall not forget the dim scene. The priest who intoned the Latin burial service out of tune, and the choir, consisting of 1 man, who sang badly and as loud as he could, and a congregation of silent mourners. Every note, every word, as it re-echoed through the chapel, seemed like the cry of despair of France, a small but pitiful note of the anguish of this country. Over at last, the coffins were shuffled out of the little chapel, and we were allowed to follow them to the bridge to St. Martin, where they were buried in a cemetery constantly upheaved by German shells. Horrible, horrible, horrible! That is all I can write. There had not yet been time to find rooms in Dieulouard, and I was asked if I minded sleeping in Pont-à-Mousson. No, not a bit. So I spent last night there alone, and perhaps for the last time, in our little room, Schroeder's and mine, of which I once sent you a photo. He was at Aix on night duty. This morning I am sitting in that room at the window writing this. All's quiet. The sky cloudless and blue. Birds are singing. The red roses in the garden blossom in the sun, and the peace of heaven is really on earth around me. Then comes the memory of Thursday night, a vision of another world. Doc will probably arrive here today, as we had to wire him at once, and so you may get this letter next mail. House in which the 9 men were sitting when hurled to the floor by shell exploding just outside. Soon afterwards a shell arrived making the large hole shown, and completely demolishing things within.